Very nice to see you all. I hope you're all enjoying yourself. And I'm going to talk to you. I thought I was talking to you for 20 minutes, but I've now discovered I'm talking to you for 40 minutes about this amazing thing called Bitcoin. And what normally happens when I give talks about Bitcoin is maybe 15 or 20% of the room know more about it than I do, and the other 75 or 80% of the room still don't understand what the hell it is and how it works. So we'll start with my kind of poll, if you like. So why don't you raise your hand, two of you, and I guess there's about 40 in the room. So, and why don't you raise your hands if you know, or cheer if you know what, if you think you understand what Bitcoin is. We've got, quite good. We've got maybe, I'm going to say 25% of the room, and then give me a cheer or put your hands up if you have no idea what it is and you'd quite like to understand it. Okay, only about 5 of you, and then so the rest of you are floating voters, somewhere in the middle. Okay, well I'll do my I'll start with my brief explanation about what it is and give you a kind of quick potted history. So in all Bitcoin is basically is cash for the internet, and I'll come back to that in a moment. So in 2008, while the world was busy panicking about the global financial crisis, a computer programmer who went by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto posted a message on an out-of-the-way mailing list on the internet, and it said, "I've just invented," let me read you exactly what he said. "I've been working on a new electronic cash system. It might make sense to get some just in case it catches on." And nobody seemed to care. It was 3 days before anyone even replied to the message that he'd left there. And the person who did eventually reply, it turns out, was one of his mates. So he'd got his mate to reply to try and get the subject up back in the discussion. But if you had, and of course what he'd invented was Bitcoin, and it would become the world's most famous alternative currency. Economists, anarchists, libertarians, criminals, speculators, drug dealers, entrepreneurs, a huge kind of diverse band of people would be inspired by his creation. And early adopters, the money that the early adopters made is mind-blowing. So we're going to fast forward a year now to 2009, October 2009, and a Bitcoin aficionado who went by the name of New Liberty Standard published the first official Bitcoin exchange rate, and he calculated the price of a Bitcoin by dividing the amount of Bitcoins his computer produced, and I'll explain what that means later, don't worry, by the amount of electricity his computer consumed. And he worked out that the price of a Bitcoin was 1,000, there were 1,309 Bitcoins to $1. And in fact, because the cost of electricity fell over the next couple of months, by December of that year, he worked out that there were 1,600 Bitcoins to $1. And he published this, and everyone was going, no, you're rating it too high, you're being ridiculous. And if you fast forward 4 years, one Bitcoin was $1,240. It was the same price as an ounce of gold. And if you bought the low and sold the high, which we all know that's very easy to do, and we all do that on a regular basis, but if you did manage to do that, you made 2 million times your money. And I mean, that really is winning the lottery, 2 million times your money. And let me tell you, I've been to some very lavish mining lunches over the years when, mining companies were doing extremely well. They are nothing compared to a couple of the Bitcoin dinners that I got invited to. I mean, the amount of money that was made by some people that they were splashing around was unbelievable. Anyway, so that's the kind of the money that's what you could have made. And now, the next thing I would say is I'm going to explain basically what Bitcoin is, but it really doesn't matter if you don't understand it. In the same way that I don't really know how a combustion engine works, I still drive a car. I don't really know how the internet works, I still use the internet. You can still use it if you don't understand it. It really doesn't matter. So that's the first thing I'd say. And it's interesting, if you go back and look at old videos when email was invented, if you look at old videos from the kind of mid-1990s, people are laughing about this mysterious thing called the @ sign. They're all going, well, what's that? I mean, you know, and making jokes about it. And words like blockchain and disintermediation and decentralization, all the kind of buzzwords that kind of baffle you a little bit today, will be as everyday in 15 or 20 years' time as things like www is, or what's your email address, and things like that. So, excuse me, I'm just coming down with a cold, so I just have to blow my nose. So, the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, is we have got card number 1 out of the way, and we are now on to card number 2. So, in various accounts, Bitcoin is 2 things. The first thing, it is a unit of money, and the second thing is it is a protocol. Now, what is a protocol? A protocol is an agreed means by which 2 people share information, And for example, when you type in a website, you might have seen the letters HTTP appear at the beginning of the website. And that stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And the Hypertext Transfer Protocol is the agreed means by which information is shared across the internet. When you're registering an email address, you might have noticed the letters SMTP appear. That stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Simple Mail Transfer Protocol is the agreed means by which emails are shared across the internet. And Bitcoin is just another protocol. And the function of the protocol is to share payment information. And the unit of money on the Bitcoin protocol is the Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is 2 things. Now, in various accounts online, I have got some US dollars, I've got some euros, I've got some pounds, I've got some supermarket rewards points, obviously Waitrose, not Tesco's, and I have some air miles. Now, these are all forms of digital money. They're all digital tokens. They don't exist in the real world. Even the pounds and the dollars, 97% of pounds and dollars are digital. Only 3% of money is actually cash. They are digital tokens. They don't exist in the real world, but they can be used at some stage. You can exchange them for some kind of product or service. So in that regard, they are all forms of money. Now, of course, the US dollar or the pound is a far more useful form of money than the air miles or the supermarket rewards points, but they are still forms of money nonetheless. If I want to use any of those forms of money, I have to go through some kind of middleman. If I want to use the pounds or the dollars, I've got to use a bank, or I've got to use PayPal, or I've got to use a credit card company. If I want to use the air miles, I've got to go through the airline. If I want to use the supermarket rewards points, I've got to go through Waitrose, and so on. So, they all involve a middleman. Now, if you contrast that with I wish I had some cash in my pocket, but I don't. But imagine I had some cash in my pocket. I could walk up and I could hand you that piece of cash, and that transaction involves no middleman. It is a direct transaction between me and the gentleman sitting at the front row. And thank you, everyone, by the way, for sitting in the front row. None of you. So it's a direct transaction. And for years, computer coders had been trying to replicate that direct transaction online, that cash transaction online. But nobody had been able to do it. And the reason is this. People have been trying to fix this problem since, I don't know, the 1980s. And the reason is this. If I send you any form of digital code, if I send you an email, or I send you a picture or a video, any form of digital code, you can cut and paste that email or that picture, and you can send it out to 10 or 20 or 100 or 1 million different people. Now, obviously, if you can cut and paste money, that money very quickly becomes useless. And so this was known as the problem of double spending. And for years, coders have been trying to fix this problem, and nobody could find a way round this problem of double spending without the use of a middleman. And then to process the transaction and verify it. Now, as soon as you use a middleman, it is no longer cash. So by the kind of mid-noughties, the problem was almost considered unsolvable until Satoshi Nakamoto came along. And by the way, if you want to know who he is, I can tell you, and the answer is in my book. I've solved the mystery of who he is, although I think it's kind of widely agreed who he is, but nobody talks about it anymore. So, and the way that Satoshi Nakamoto found round this problem was an ingenious automated system of distributed record. So in other words, and it was this thing called the blockchain. Now, you've probably heard this word, the blockchain. You don't really understand it. As soon as any transaction takes place, it is recorded on the blockchain, on this distributed record. When I say distributed, the same record is shared among hundreds of computers all over the world. And once it is recorded on the blockchain, that transaction is final. It is permanent. It cannot be changed and it cannot be undone. It is secure. And so this automated system called the blockchain meant that you can now send tiny amounts of money or vast amounts of money to somebody else without any kind of middleman. The only middleman is this distributed record, the blockchain, at zero cost. And that, in brief, is the ingenious breakthrough, the ingenious technological breakthrough that is Bitcoin. And the next question is how the blockchain works. And I'm always tempted, I always feel compelled to explain how the blockchain works. But today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to resist that temptation because I'm going to refer you to my original premise that you don't need to know how it works in order to use it. I might explain how it works later in the presentation, but I'm going to skip it for now. And so that is what got all the techies so excited. The blockchain is basically the technological breakthrough behind Bitcoin. Now, obviously, Bitcoin had a huge run-up in price, and then it's fallen back, and it seems to have found support at $200 or just below $200, and it's kind of been trading sideways for probably about 2 years, well, a year and a bit now. And people are using it. The technology works. It's finding a lot of use on the black market. There is this huge, the online black market, there is this huge rise in the online black market where you can go and buy illegal stuff, drugs, I don't know what else, anything else you think of that is illegal. Now, I'm not endorsing online black markets, but the fact that it is being used, and it's several $1 million a day of goods are now trading hands on the online black markets. That's a substantial amount. And the fact that the black market is often the first market to embrace a new technology and make it work on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that black markets are making the technology works is testament to the fact that Bitcoin does actually work. Black markets don't have huge pools of venture capital to fall back on. They can't kind of do what Google does and develop a huge market share before it actually turns profitable. They have to make it work quickly. So we know that the money system works. And what we're now seeing is people are looking at this blockchain technology and going, right. And in fact, when he invented it, Satoshi Nakamoto saw uses for blockchain technology beyond an alternative money system. And people are now going, right, the money system works, we know it works, it's growing by a little bit every day, it's finding more and more users, it's not going to replace the US dollar or anything like that, like its most ardent admirers said it would, but it's still growing on a daily basis, not by perhaps as much as speculators would like, but it is finding more and more practical day-to-day use, especially on the black market. But people are now saying, this technology works, what else can we use it for beyond an alternative system of money, beyond internet cash? And I'm just going to describe to you now some of the things that people will use blockchain tech for. And it is properly revolutionary, ladies and gents. It's going to change the way a lot of industries function. And so let me remind you, all the blockchain is a system of permanent memory that it cannot be altered, that is held on many thousands of computers around the world, verified, so you can't defraud it. Once it's there, it's permanent, that keeps on growing. Every 10 minutes, another record is added to the blockchain, another block of information is added. So you have this huge chain of blocks, hence the word blockchain. So it is a system of permanent memory that grows organically. So what are the applications for this? Well, the first one is communication. I remind you of that direct transfer of money between me and the gentleman here that involved no middleman. If you want to message somebody, you have to use WhatsApp or iMessage or Gmail or Yahoo or whoever the internet service, or Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is. There are now means by which people can communicate directly with each other, send a message from one person to another with no middleman. Now that has huge, huge implications for privacy and surveillance, terrorism. All sorts of moral questions get raised. But nevertheless, the technology is there and being developed. So think about the implications of that. Because at the moment, every time I send an email to somebody on Gmail, I get 1,000,001 things on the side of my address trying to sell me products based on the email that I've just sent to somebody else. That goes away, which may be a good or a bad thing. We're going to see the blockchain is a new way you can prove your identity online using the blockchain. So we're going to see the phasing out of usernames and passwords and systems of automated identity proving using blockchain tech. And if you think of your online reputation, once you've got identity proven, then you quite naturally have reputation, ownership, all these kinds of things. So if you think of your online reputation, if you think of the importance to a business of its TripAdvisor ratings, or your eBay, if you're a seller on eBay, or even a buyer, your eBay rating, your Uber rating, these things can all be recorded on a blockchain. And so if you think in the old days how important somebody's reputation was, and that's kind of gone away, but we're going to see hopefully, a wholesale improvement in online behavioral standards as a result of reputation. I said once you have identity, then you naturally have ownership. And then once you have ownership, you have contract rights and property rights. And so your token of ownership using blockchain tech. I thought you were actually walking out, but you were actually walking. I thought you were walking out in rather a kind of bold way, but you're actually walking. So I was about to take offence, but now I take that you sitting there as a compliment. So thank you very much for doing that. Yes, and so so let's think about ownership. This idea of using the blockchain to prove you have your identity, you can prove your ownership of something. Once you can prove your ownership of something, you can trade your ownership of that thing. So we're going to see blockchain tech used in the trading of financial assets, and already the NASDAQ have developed a system whereby financial securities can be traded over the blockchain. We're going to see things like the DVLA. If you think of car registry, land registry, the Isle of Man and Honduras have both putting their land registries on a blockchain, where at the moment the government is talking about selling off, privatising the land registry. Did you know that 50% of land in the UK is still unregistered? It is absolutely mind-blowingly stupid. We're going to see the blockchain used in that. If anyone is working in blockchain tech, I think it could be used for the selling of tickets. If you think of music tickets and concert tickets and all that kind of thing, that's a huge, huge industry. Blockchain tech can prove ownership of tickets and trade that ownership. And if you know your history, you'll remember William the Conqueror's Doomsday Book, which was, I think, 1087 or something like that, the first kind of registry of ownership. And it was done for tax purposes mainly. But the blockchain is a kind of digital doomsday book for the 21st century. The Doomsday Book was still being used to settle land disputes as late as the 1960s, amazingly. And this blockchain, this incredible system of record that cannot be defrauded and ownership. And in fact, this has a lot of third world applications. The economist Hernan de Soto won a Nobel Prize for economics with his arguments about the need for recognized and protected property title in the third world is essential to economic growth, and it's one of the things that is holding many countries back, is this lack of clear property title. Well, the blockchain can go a long way to solving that, and it will show digital property title. It's going to have a role to play in insurance, in accountancy, in law. Now, these are all businesses that haven't been shaken up by the internet in the way that music was, in the way that publishing was, in the way that newspapers were. And they all put a kind of digital button on an analog model. And it's possible that blockchain tech will do for them what the internet did to publishing. Notarization, when you have a piece of paper approved and stamped by a lawyer to prove that, it will have a role to play in that. Smart contracts. There's even a blockchain-based mobile phone operating system being developed called Trustonic. And if you think of, we all use either Android or OS, and basically everything is recorded there. With a blockchain-based thing, again, the implications for privacy are enormous. So these are all wonderful areas, and this is perhaps the one that has the potential to shake the world up more than anything else, and it is voting. Now, it might be just because I'm getting older, but I just did not care about politics when I was young, and I've become more and more interested in it the more I've got older. And it's partly an age thing, but I also think it's partly things like Twitter and social media and online publishing ignite the political debate. And more people seem to be, if they're not voting, they seem to be participating in the debate. And there is now the technology, or there will soon be the technology, where you can vote on your mobile phone in a way that is 10 times more secure than current US or UK voting systems at an absolute fraction of the cost. It's fraud-free and it's instantly auditable. So, auditable, thank you. I can actually audit my own vote while keeping my anonymity protected. And it's in a way that even governments can't manipulate, and that has enormous implications for governance. If we'd been using our mobile phones to vote, we would have known the result of the general election at 10:01. We wouldn't have had to wait up all night, which might be a bad thing, because we wouldn't get to see their faces when they lose the seats. But anyway, and I think we are coming into an era. At the moment, we operate under a system of representative democracy. And it kind of works and it doesn't work, but it's a very antiquated system. Locals represent somebody to go and they elect somebody to go and represent their views in Parliament. And if 10,000 people vote for red and 9,999 people vote for blue, then the 10,000 win and the other 9,999 kind of go a little bit unrepresented under the current system. I think we're going to see an era of where the population are just going to demand more and more referenda. We've already had the referendum about Scotland. We're going to have a referendum about Europe in the next year or two. I just think more and more votes, people are going to say, well, we want a referendum about this. And so I think this blockchain-based technology, ladies and gentlemen, is going to usher in an era of more direct democracy instead of the representative system under which we currently operate. Of course, the powers that be will try and fight that. They won't want it. But if you think about the implications of that, they're enormous. So I say this in my book, the revolution will not be televised. It will be cryptographically time-stamped on the blockchain. So how am I doing? Pretty good. And of course, I won't go into, there's all sorts of uses for Bitcoin in things like crowdfunding, payments, remittance, and all that kind of thing. It's a much cheaper way of sending money than, it's also micropayments, the use of micropayments. That's a massive growth area. But I just want to talk about one other thing. The savings that can be made in payments and remittance are enormous. Now, let's talk about the landline. This is an interesting subject. Who in the room only has a mobile phone? They don't have a landline anymore. See, quite a few. I'm going to say in the kind of over there, maybe 5, 6 or 7% of the room. Who has a landline but doesn't actually use it anymore? Most of the room. And who has a landline and does actually use it to make calls? Okay, a few people over here. We're not using our landlines anymore except as a means to receive, to use the internet. And as each year goes by, fewer and fewer people are using their landlines. The peak of the landline came in 2008, and there were 1.3 billion landlines worldwide. And that number is now in decline, although not by that much. Now, with a global population of close to 7 billion, you might have expected that 1.3 billion number to be higher. People like to communicate. Telecoms companies like to profit from people communicating, and they'll lay cables in the Arctic, in the Sahara, anywhere, if they think they could make money out of it. And if they didn't, it's because they didn't think there was any money to be made. Now, a recent UN study revealed that now 6.3 billion people worldwide have a mobile phone. More people worldwide have a mobile phone than have a toilet, or a lavatory, as my mother calls it. And this proves quite categorically, as if it needed proving, that the desire to communicate is there. So why did the landline fail when the mobile phone succeeded? And the obvious reason is that the superior technology of mobile telephony has made widespread coverage cheaper. Sure, that's a factor. But there's something else. There's an elephant in the room. Most poor people, most people in the developing world, even today, are unbanked. They didn't and still don't have access to the basic financial services you need to get a landline. You need credit and or a bank account. They might have wanted one, but they couldn't get one. The telecoms companies concluded that the demand wasn't there, and so the infrastructure was never built. And so the financial system was actually a barrier to progress. With a mobile phone, you don't need a bank account. You can buy the phone and the airtime with cash. Almost anyone can get a mobile, banked or unbanked, and they have. Now, the World Bank estimates that something like 50% of the global population doesn't have access to basic financial services. Only 2 billion people are banked and take part in e-commerce, yet somewhere between 3.5 billion and 5.5 billion, so way in excess of half the world's population, have at least some access to the internet. So we're talking about half the world's population are excluded from e-commerce because they don't have access to the necessary financial infrastructure, despite the fact that they want to trade, exchange, earn money, and improve their lot. Now, thanks to Bitcoin and other forms of mobile money, the M-Pesa in Kenya being the best example, you don't need traditional financial services or a bank account anymore. A bank account is useful, sure, but it's no longer essential. And as each day passes, it will become less so. To participate in e-commerce, all you'll need is some internet access. And most of the world's population are going to have that long before they have proper healthcare, sanitation, education. And so I'm almost suggesting that traditional banking is as redundant as the landline is. suddenly the developed world is going to have 3.5 billion people to exchange products and services with, to outsource jobs to, and so on. And that is a quite mind-boggling amount of potential new trade. I think we're heading into a massive boom, economic boom. And the money that the unbanked 3.5 billion people might make will enable them to buy the sanitation, the healthcare, the education that they haven't had for far too long. And rather as the Industrial Revolution enabled people to escape rural poverty and within a generation become part of a new educated middle class, maybe 2 generations, so might the coming financial revolution, as I dub it. And we are at the beginning of that, ladies and gentlemen. That is everything I have to say to you. I'm going to stop there. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Would anybody like to ask a question? Sir?
Yeah, so today if I was selling something to you,
yeah.
and you said I'll pay you £200, I'd be very happy.
Yeah.
If you said I'll pay you a Bitcoin, I'd be a little bit dubious.
Okay.
It suggests that we haven't reached a tipping point where these things are widely accepted.
Okay, go on.
I was going to say, is it possible to predict when this tipping point arrives and I can go out there and pay Bitcoins, everyone's happy with them just in the same way
sure.
we are with pounds,
okay.
dollars and so on?
I'm going to answer because I just need to repeat the question so that everyone else can hear it. The gentleman said if we were to exchange, to do a deal online and I agreed to pay him £200, he'd be very happy with that. If I offered to pay him a Bitcoin, he'd be a bit more dubious. When will the tipping point come whereby the mainstream is happy to use Bitcoin for goods and services? When will that tipping point be? That is a very good question, and I don't know the answer. Next question. No, no. I'll tell you what. The signs to look for is more and more people having Bitcoin wallets, more and more people using them, more and more acceptance. And this is where I believe the black markets have a role to play, because so many people are now using them on the black market, and stuff that happens on the black market, it will eventually feed through to the mainstream. I think there are a lot of people, and I'm making projections onto you, that are interested in Bitcoin, like the idea of it, would like to know more about it, maybe have a wallet or don't yet have a wallet. I'm going to say 5 years to answer your question, but it's just a gradual process of osmosis. By the way, if none of you own a Bitcoin, here's what you should do. You should go to either Coinbase or blockchain.info. These are websites, and you should sign up for a wallet. All you need is a password and your email address. And a wallet is effectively a bit like an email address. It's where you keep your Bitcoins. You should then buy £25 worth or £20 worth of Bitcoins, which you can sometimes you can do that at those sites, sometimes you will need to use a site called Bitilicious to do that. Once you've got your you can just buy them with a credit card or by sending £20 in with your bank account. Once you've got a wallet and you deposited some money in it, make a note of your Bitcoin address, and then get a friend to do exactly the same thing. And then just practice sending each other small amounts of money, the Bitcoin equivalent of 5p, 2p, 1p. And once you've kind of got the hang of that, it's very easy. Once you've got the hang of that, take a trip and go to Shoreditch. Go to one of the trendy coffee shops in Shoreditch that accepts Bitcoins with your friend, or you don't have to go with your friend, you can go with yourself, or you can go by with somebody you've met on the black market, anything, and just buy a cup of coffee with your Bitcoin wallet, and there you go. It's a good way to, I'm not recommending go out and speculate vast fortunes in it, I'm recommending learn the technology and educate yourselves. And that is what I would recommend doing. And yes, next question.
Quick question. How are the number of Bitcoins themselves controlled? I mean, how is it that they're not going to just all of a sudden have a vast inflation of them if it does start to take off?
The question is, how are the number of Bitcoins controlled? How do we know we're not going to have a vast inflation of them? You've raised a very interesting question. The man who invented Bitcoin was a bit of a gold bug. We have a debt-based inflationary system of money. It relies on the constant expansion of the money supply. He designed, quite deliberately, a he was a big gold bug, and he wanted to design a digital currency that replicates gold, hence the use of the term mining, by the way. And he deliberately programmed it so that there is a limit to how many bitcoins can be created. And a certain amount, bitcoins are created through the process of mining. Eventually, I think the number is in the year 2140, Malcolm? 2140, and it will be 21 million bitcoins in existence. So he has deliberately designed a deflationary system of money. In other words, a system of money whose purchasing power increases as time goes by. Can it be reprogrammed? There's an argument going on about that at the moment, but the answer at the moment is no. And the way that bitcoins are created, we'll go back to the blockchain now. Now, you remember, we've got this huge system, this huge database in the sky, this huge memory that processes and ratifies all the transactions. Who maintains the blockchain? Databases need maintaining, they need verifying. The way that you maintain the blockchain is you download the Bitcoin software onto your computer and basically click go. And then your computer will be participating in the network and verifying all these transactions. Now, why on earth would you do that? It takes a lot of processing power. It takes up a lot of electricity. There's absolutely no reason to do that. So he designed a system where if you do that, you will be paid to do that in bitcoins. So in the process of maintaining the network, you are actually paid in newly created bitcoins in order to do that. So it's quite Ayn Randian, or it's quite Marxist, depending on your point of view, in that in acting in your own self-interest, which is the reward of bitcoins, you are actually doing something for the greater good of the community, which is maintaining the network. And that is basically how the process of mining works. And it is programmed the amount of bitcoins that are released with each mining transaction that takes place. But, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't recommend any of you to go out and start mining, because it is now, rather like gold mining, at best a marginal business, whereas before fortunes were made, that is no longer the case. Yes, sir. And so just to finish off, so the network is actually maintained by computer processing power. And the most powerful computers are the most efficient miners. So the whole thing is kind of self-reinforcing, and it is all automated computer programming rather than faith in central bankers. Hello, sir.
What about the other cryptocurrencies? How do they compare?
What about the other cryptocurrencies? Well, since Bitcoin was invented, there have been 300, 400, 500, 600 other cryptocurrencies, copies, that have been invented. Some of them, in many ways, are actually better than Bitcoin. Some of them are just scams. The best ones do something else while they mine the Bitcoin. There's one that, for example, finds new prime numbers as it creates them. And it might be that Bitcoin turns out to be the equivalent of Netscape Navigator or something like that, and something else comes along that's better. But at the moment, Bitcoin is kind of synonymous with digital currency. It has all the investment, it has all the infrastructure, it has all the belief, it has a huge first mover advantage. So for the moment, I'd stick with Bitcoin. But who knows what the future has to bring. Sir? Do I think Bitcoin can ever overcome volatility? It'll have to get much bigger and much more expensive. Because at the moment it's just such a small market. It's like, I think the overall market cap of Bitcoin is, if Bitcoin is $350, the overall market cap would be about 5 billion, which in the global context of things is just tiny. And BHP or something is bigger, and so, or maybe not anymore. But so it will have to get much more bigger, much more bigger. I sound like my daughter. Much bigger, and because then when new money comes in, you reduce the volatility. Lady down here. I think, am I done? Okay, I'll ask one more question and then. How the gold price is affected by Bitcoin? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that gold price is affected by
Well, there are lots of similarities between gold and... The question was, ladies and gentlemen, what about the gold price and Bitcoin? Do the same things drive it? One thing I've noticed is when I go to Bitcoin, I'm 46 years old. I know I look a lot younger, it's hard to believe, but I'm 46 years old. When I go to Bitcoin conferences, I am pretty much the oldest person there. If I go to a specific gold conference, I'm usually one of the youngest people there. Despite the fact that they're both in many ways alternative forms of money, they are completely different worlds. And so, as a result, it's different people buying them, it's different people operating in the sector. So in that regard, they don't have anything in common whatsoever. There are a lot of monetary enthusiasts, people who want money reform. Those kind of people are kind of, you see in both worlds. The Bitcoin price was driven up recently from goings on in China, but it was actually, well, we don't quite know, but it looks like there was a pyramid scam in China, and that's what caused it. At times of financial panic with Greece, the Bitcoin price drove up. So there is that similarity, but on the whole, they seem to be operating on different, whatever the word is. But maybe over time, that will solve. Ladies and gents, I can see I'm being muscled out. The mafia are all standing like that. Let me just very quickly, I've got about 10 copies of my book. If anyone wants to buy it, I'm going to go out there and sell it, and I'll sign it for you. And I've actually got about 3 first editions. So if anyone wants one, I'll be out there. And thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.